Pope Adrian I was pope from 1 February 772 to his death in 795. He was the son of Theodore, a Roman nobleman. Start of papacy. Shortly after Adrian's accession in 772, the territory ruled by the papacy was invaded by Desiderius, king of the Lombards, and Adrian was compelled to seek the assistance of the Frankish king Charlemagne, who entered Italy with a large army. Charlemagne besieged Desiderius in his capital of Pavia. After taking the town, he banished the Lombard king to the Abbey of Corbie in France, and adopted the title, King of the Lombards, himself. The Pope, whose expectations had been aroused, had to content himself with some additions to the Duchy of Rome, the Exarchate of Ravenna, and the Pentapolis in the Marches, which consisted of the 5 cities on the Adriatic coast from Rimini to Ancona, with the coastal plain as far as the mountains. He celebrated the occasion by striking the earliest papal coin, and in a mark of the direction the medieval papacy was to take. No longer dated his documents by the emperor in the East, but by the reign of Charles, king of the Franks. A mark of such newly settled conditions in the Duchy of Rome is the Domus Culta Capricorum, the central Roman villa that Adrian assembled from a nucleus of his inherited estates and acquisitions from neighbors in the countryside north of Very. The villa is documented in Liber Pontificalis, but its site was not rediscovered until the 1960s, when excavations revealed the structures on a gently rounded hill that was only marginally capable of self-defense, but fully self-sufficient for a mixed economy of grains and vineyards, olives, vegetable gardens and piggery, with its own grain mill, smithies and tile kilns. During the 10th century, villages were carved out of Adrian's Capricorum estate. Campagnano, mentioned first in 1076, Formolo, mentioned in 1027, Mazzano, mentioned in 945, and Stabia, mentioned in 998. Foreign relations. While the Lombards had always been openly respectful of the papacy, the popes distrusted them. The popes had sought aid from the Eastern Roman Empire to keep these barbarians in check. Adrian continued this policy. Because the East could offer no direct aid, Adrian then looked to the Franks to offset the power of the Lombards. Friendly relations between Pope and King were not disturbed by the theological dispute about the veneration of icons. In 787, Second Council of Nicaea, approved by Pope Adrian, had confirmed the practice and excommunicated the iconoclasts. Charlemagne, however, who had received the council's decisions only in a bad Latin translation, consulted with his theologians and sent the Pope the Capitulary Contra Synodum, a response critical of several passages found in the council's acts. He also had his theologians, including Theodulf of Orleans, compose the more comprehensive Libri Carolini. Pope Adrian reacted to the capitulary with a defense of the council. In 794, a synod held at Frankfurt in 794 discussed the issue but refused to receive the Libri and content itself with condemning extreme forms of veneration of icons. In 787, Adrian elevated the English diocese of Lichfield to an archdiocese at the request of the English bishops and King Offa of Mercia to balance the ecclesiastic power in that land between Kent and Mercia. He gave the Lichfield bishop Hagibert the pallium in 788. Regarding the Muslims, he maintained the prohibition of Pope Zachary of selling slaves to Muslims, whom Adrian described as the unspeakable race of Saracens, in order to guarantee a labor pool and to keep the power of Muslim rivals in check. He also encouraged Charlemagne to lead his troops into Spain against the Muslims there, and was generally interested in expanding Christian influence and eliminating Muslim control. Legacy. An epitaph written by Charlemagne in verse, in which he styles Adrian, father, is still to be seen at the door of the Vatican Basilica. Adrian restored some of the ancient aqueducts of Rome and rebuilt the churches of Santa Maria in Cosmedine, decorated by Greek monks fleeing from the iconoclastal persecutions, and of San Marco in Rome. At the time of his death at the age of 95, his was the longest papacy in church history until it was surpassed by the 24-year papacy of Pius VI in the late 18th century. Only three other popes, Pius IX, Leo XIII, and John Paul II, have reigned for longer periods since.